Reflection story today is about John and Almedia Livingston. And an alligator?
Good afternoon, Tom Galuscio, President of the Westerly Historical Society, here on October 23rd, 2024, with some special guests, John and Almedia Livingston. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Reflections, which is sponsored by the Westerly Historical Society. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. So I'm Almedia, and I was born in 1942. I grew up on the first on Beach Street, and then moved down to East Avenue, Babcock Road, where I spent the rest of my 18 years before. It was a dirt road back in those days, East Avenue, Babcock Road, and in order to go back and forth into town, we would have to take the bus, and I would ride the school bus. I went to Elm Street School, and then I went into Babcock Junior High School, and then into Westerly High School. And at that time, my sister was born, and her name was Bonnie, and she lived along with us on Babcock Road. And it was, we didn't have many playmates because there were very few people that lived down there. Dad, my father, Charles Monroe, was at the greenhouse. He was at that time the owner of the greenhouse on Beach Street, and it was Monroe Florist. Okay, my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather Monroe, came from New Haven. Originally they came from, my grandfather came from Scotland, and my grandmother came from Canada, and her name was Ralston. They married and they settled in New Haven, where my grandfather had a greenhouse in New Haven. And my mother's parents were on Cranston, and they lived on Spruce Street. And my grandfather worked at the, what was the name of the place down in down in Charleston, the big farm, and he was a chauffeur. And my grandmother was a Chase, and she lived and was brought up in Westerly on Greenman Avenue. Okay. And there was a sister there who was Aunt Annie, and she ended up marrying a Lenehan. So that is how we became part of the Lenehan clan.
Okay. John, how about your beginnings in Westerly? Where'd your grandparents and folks come from?
I was born in 1936. My paternal grandfather was born in Westerly, and he married a young lady from Fort Worth and brought her here. And he was down in Fort Worth because he was a carpenter at that time. They were building hotels and all sorts of things in the Fort Worth area. My maternal grandparents came from England and Bolton, Lancashire, and they were part of the thread mill in Pawcatuck. That British Thread brought I think that's the name, brought a whole group of people over to run their thread mill down on the lower end of Mechanic Street. Converted part of that into apartments, and the rest of it is in the process someday of being converted. It's a huge old plant across from Northwest Marine. My grandmother ran a fish and chips place on Mechanic Street next to a place called the Mahogany Palace in that area, which is now C.C. O'Brien.
That's correct.
It was quite a change along there. My paternal grandmother and my father's sister-in-law were killed in the '38 hurricane in Misquamicut, and I would have been there, but I was 2 years old and I was sick. So my mother stayed home with me and we lucked out.
This incredible story is one of the most tragic from the hurricane of '38. On that fateful afternoon, John's grandmother, Westerly Livingston, and his father's sister-in-law joined 8 other women from the Christ Episcopal Church in Westerly for a picnic at a cottage in Misquamicut. They were totally unaware of the hurricane's approach. The 10 women watched the tide begin to rise over the barrier beach, and they realized their cottage wasn't that secure. They walked over to another house. The woman who rented the house was frightened and said she was going to get in her car and leave. Did anyone want to go with her, she asked. They all said no. They were not afraid and would wait out the storm. Giant waves began crashing against the door. It must have been terrifying, trapped out there in the raging storm. At 4:30, a tidal wave surged over the dunes and all 10 women perished.
My brother was there and acting up, who was 3 years older than me. He was acting up because he was apparently frightened with the waves and the noise. And the local minister brought him home, and he had another errand that he was doing, and that saved the 3 of them. But I also went to Elm Street School for 6 years.
But he's much older than I am.
It's a rumor. I am, not much. And that was quite an interesting place because in those days we had 6 grades. And of course there was a 3rd story on the building, the cafeteria and the auditorium area. And we had, principal was Miss Oatley. And she was a bird collector. She collects stuffed birds. You find a dead bird, bring it into her, and she'd be delighted. Probably get an A for that quarter. Then the junior high school, where we went from 7th to 9th grade and into high school. And that, of course, was, in that time, just 3 years, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. At the age of 17, I enlisted in the Marine Corps and enjoyed a stay at Parris Island and on to aviation schools in Florida, and then eventually over in Japan for a year and a half. Just at the tail end, the Korean War was over, but it afforded me the GI Bill, Korean GI Bill, which was very lucky. Was discharged honorably as a sergeant and enjoyed it. I mean, everybody hates it when you're there, but afterwards, you still enjoy it. I went to the University of Rhode Island thanks to a gentleman who was a teacher, Cy Morgan, who forced me into mathematics studies and accomplished in a couple of months what normally takes a couple of years. And he was a great person to help me out. He also was an ex-Marine as well. He was a mentor for me. After graduation from college, well, somewhere along the line there, I guess,
We got married.
We got married.
Right.
Oh, wonderful. So you met in college?
No.
I was in between sophomore and junior years. I guess we got married. And by the time I graduated, we had 2 children. So,
So going back to, where did you meet if you didn't meet in school?
In the library.
we always admire the large tables in the reading room of the library because that's basically where we met. And we knew each other, sort of, before. But,
And he had an MG,
Okay.
a TD MG.
And then, yes. Beautiful
A
car.
beautiful car. And he would always ask me if I'd like to go for a ride.
So that was the bait.
That was
It was the bait, and it worked.
It did. It did.
Wonderful.
We've been
Fell in
married
love
for
and-
almost 65 years. Next one will be 65 years, which
That's
not
wonderful.
bad.
Yes,
Wow,
congratulations.
congratulations. So you met at the library, you got married.
Yeah, and I spent a bit of time working after classes and on weekends for her father, Charlie Monroe, at the greenhouses.
Tell us a little
And
bit
that
about
was
that.
a huge going business in those days.
That's a fabled business in Westerly. Tell us more about that. I'm quite
Well,
interested.
Outside of having an alligator, they had somewhere around 250,000 square feet of glass. So it wasn't a small, they were a grower, and they were a grower of holiday plants and holiday cut flowers and things like that, and were shipped to New York. Roses were shipped every night on something that doesn't exist anymore called Railway Express, which morphed into American Express. And they used to pick up at the railroad station these huge boxes. They look like a coffin, cardboard boxes full of roses and gladiolas. And they were probably the better part of 25 employees, because it was a huge business, really. On a wintry, windy day, where it's 10, 12, 15 degrees, the greenhouses could burn a tank truck full of oil, 7,000 gallons of oil. And prior to that, they had backup of coal boilers where you had to shovel coal onto a conveyor belt and it went in. But the greenhouses were quite active. The reason the Monroe family were able to purchase the greenhouses in the World War I area, local coal dealers would not sell coal to the owner because he was German origins. And Mr. Charles Monroe Sr. from New Haven bought the whole facility. There were about 30-some acres of land there, and it was quite a thriving business.
Oh, I quite remember.
But what really killed that business and many others was in 1970, fuel oil prices just went haywire, and that was kind of the end of that. And Charlie was getting to the point where he wanted to retire, and his biggest problem was somehow finding a home for his pet alligator. Ferdinand,
Ferdinand,
who was about 7 feet long and certainly a handful.
I used to feel so bad for that alligator sitting in that tub all day as a kid going through.
He was the best fed alligator because all the fishermen would come and drop off the fish and feed them. And Horace Barber, who worked for Dad, was an avid fisherman and would always supply fish. And when it was not the fishing season, Dad would go to Agway and buy frozen horse meat. And that's what he would be fed every day. And he was a very content alligator. He really was.
He was.
And they
he
kept
had
adding
several
on to the...
generations of visitors, children that would come to see him.
All the school kids would
right.
march
School
down
kids.
there.
I,
and-
School bus.
I was one.
You were one?
Absolutely.
Well, you would be glad to know that Ferdinand, Dad could not find any zoo that would take him locally. So all of a sudden, Allen's Alligator Farm in Florida said that they would take him. So big fanfare and, TV and what have you, and they photographed and recorded the packing up of Ferdinand in a coffin-like box, because that's how they were going to ship him down to Florida.
With taped jaws.
Yeah, taped the jaw and everything. And he went, but he had to be trained to be wild because he was hand-fed for years. So he had to learn how to be wild, which they taught him.
The man who taught Ferdinand to be wild was Ross Allen. Allen was a colorful Florida celebrity, stuntman, and promoter. He'd founded the Reptile Institute in Silver Springs, Florida, where he staged reptile demonstrations, alligator wrestling, and rattlesnake milking. Allen had a nose for publicity, as evidenced by this promotional video.
Ross Allen, the famous star of countless wildlife adventure movies, is going to show us on Guided Tour today how he keeps the Ross Allen Reptile Institute down at Florida's Silver Springs, well stocked with wild animals and reptiles. At the Old Allen, a lesson in how he captures dangerous alligators with his bare hands. They're cruising along the Silver River, keeping a sharp lookout for the elusive gators. Ross has spotted a big 8-foot alligator in the water, and over the side, one snap of a gator's massive jaws, or even a well-directed flip of its heavy tail, is enough to kill a man. Not many men would come to grips, unarmed and underwater, with a 200-pound monster like this one. And he's never yet lost a fight with an alligator. As he puts it, you only lose a contest with them once, and he's learned never to underestimate the strength and speed of the big gators.
My father, a couple of years later, got a letter from Allen Alligator Farm saying, "Dear Mr. Monroe, we regret to inform you that Ferdinand has passed, but he died with a smile on his face." So obviously he'd found a mate. But anyway, so that was a nice ending to otherwise.
He came to the greenhouses as a wedding present. Somebody
Mom and
in
Dad.
Florida sent 2 of them in a cigar box, which you could do in those days. In 1938, his mate was killed by
The
glass
hurricane.
collapsing from the hurricane, falling on top of him, and I guess killed him.
Oh, right there at the florist?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right at the florist, yeah, yeah. So,
And I watched them over the years grow because I used to deliver newspapers, the Westerly Sun, to Monroe florists back when they were located in a different building on 55 Beach Street, part of the greenhouse property, but it was adjacent to the house that used to be there.
Okay, yep, that's where this shopping center is now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, so you were in and out of the florist before you even met Almeida.
yes.
I was.
You knew the family pretty well, and I'm sure they
Well.
knew you. That's interesting.
I watched him grow, the alligator, over a period of time from 2.5 feet to 7 feet.
Okay.
A little gap in between, but
A little bit. So you spent some time in the service, and then you went to the University of Rhode Island, and where did you come or go to after that?
after that I worked for the Bostitch Company, and not in staples and things of that sort, but a group called the Container Machinery Division, and we made machinery that made corrugated boxes and things of that sort, and cut them up and shaped them and folded them and things of that nature. And then I went to work for a company called R.R. Donnelly, who was the largest printer in the country at that time. And we were printing here locally in Old Saybrook, Time, Life, Sports Illustrated, and we were a captive plant for Time Incorporated. And ended up working with, in international sales with Harris, Heidelberg, whatever you want to call the company. Went through several name changes and ended up basically in Asia. And for about 5 years, Mita and I lived in Singapore and worked out of there. I retired in 1999, and we decided that we were going to go up and down the intercoastal waterway in our trawler. which we did for some 13 years. Go down there for the winter and come
Turn
back
around
up,
and come back.
come back in the spring.
By that time, all the children were grown and in college, and some had married, and
Speaking of children, we have four.
we have four children.
okay.
We
Yeah.
have four. 12 grandchildren and 4+ great-grandchildren.
Yeah. All
Plus we
scattered
don't
all
know
around.
about
So I know David and
David
Jeff
and Jeffrey.
and Lisa.
Oh, you know them all.
Andrew.
I
And
don't know-
Andrew.
I don't know Andrew.
You don't, Andrew is out in California. He's a lawyer out in California. And Lisa. Lisa's the oldest,
Yeah,
yes.
I
yeah.
know Lisa very well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, great kids.
yes, they are.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Yep, they are a lot
Yeah,
of fun. and-
great-grandchildren, too.
Yeah, so we've done very well. We did move across the border because John's, one of the companies that he worked for, thought he should live closer by in Connecticut, so John moved me across to Pawcatuck.
Yeah, I work for McGraw-Hill, and they thought it would be interesting if I moved to Connecticut. Okay. We moved to Pawcatuck, Castle Hill.
Castle Hill,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, where we're, Lou
was-
Hartford, who was a
yes.
builder, and he
Built
is just,
built my parents' home. Lou was up in, he was a
Really?
great guy. Yeah, good
Really?
Scotsman.
Yeah, yeah.
Lou and Mary were
Oh,
friends.
Oh, that's right. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my God. Goodness.
Well, I bet the doors never worked quite right, though, in the house. We had two houses that Lou built, and each one had certain knacks, and you always remembered Lou, because sometimes the doors were just hung not quite.
He built everything for my folks by scratch. He really
Everything.
And
Oh,
he
yeah.
built everything to his specs.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
wanted to be
Yeah,
a finished carpenter, but he was more of a
So you spent
framer.
a little time in Pawcatuck before you came back to
yeah,
Westerly.
yeah.
And John, you grew up on School Street?
Grew up on School Street and Spring Street,
Okay. Yeah.
which I understand you have some connection to.
The opposite end of Spring Street is where
Right.
my grandparents lived for many years. My father and uncle lived a short time in that home after they moved from Hobart Street. But yeah, that was a great little area. They had different markets around.
Oh, great markets, right?
Yeah.
Agores and
Yeah.
Spargos,
Spargos.
That was on
Yes.
School Street, correct?
that was
Yeah.
on School Street.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Luigi's, just up on Cross Street,
Not familiar with that one.
just before you get to Hobart Street, just before
Okay.
Chester Avenue.
Okay. Was that owned by the Ligoris?
No, they were on Hobart Street.
That's okay. I remember my father talking about the Ligori Market on close. He started on Hobart Street.
Well, I don't know, might have been, but
Yeah,
I don't
excellent.
think
Well,
so.
Very interesting. And while John was working over at Cottrell,
I was home taking care of the children. I was a
Okay.
stay-at-home and got involved with really starting the Center for the Arts. There was a great group of volunteers that all banded together and created and helped start the Center for the Arts. And
What a great
I
program.
was one of the. So
he was
that's
actually president of the Center for the Arts for a while.
for a while,
Wow.
yeah. So
Which is
that's
now the George Kent
music
Yeah,
Performance
yeah,
Center or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
and sang in the chorus and
And you retired. You went back and forth to Florida.
yeah.
You did a lot of
Yeah.
sailing, some sailing up
We-
here
yeah.
in season.
Used to race all the time in the summertime and ladies' races.
Oh,
And
okay.
yes, so we're active in the summer doing
Good.
that.
What about now? What keeps you busy?
Let me see, what does keep us busy? It seems as though an awful lot.
Grandkids for sure.
The grandchildren and just being involved in ourselves and enjoying my husband because he's down at the dock in the summertime. So it's
Actually,
nice to
I'm
have him back. He's a dock master.
Oh,
in Watch Hill.
are you? Okay.
And I've been
Yeah.
doing that now for the better part of 10 years. And it's a fun job. It's just, you got to do something.
Something with boats.
Keep busy,
Sure.
something with boats. You can listen to all their problems, and then you can say, not mine.
Not my problem. That's great. Well, you've both lived a very active and wonderful life supporting this community. Along the way, has anybody stood out who made a great impression on you in this community that helped guide you along the path or steered you in the right direction? I know you mentioned Cy Morgan.
Cy Morgan was one that he helped me out considerably. And as Mita mentioned, he was really a mentor for me. And one other person in the printing industry that was somewhat significant in my lifetime was a gentleman named Curly Saunders. I don't know if you, Stanton Saunders was his name. And at one point he was vice president of Cottrell's sales. And he was a very influential character in many regards. And he had a great history as well. So those two people probably about the only ones I can think of that really jump out at me.
How about you, Almeida?
And our parents were, yes, they
Any
were,
teachers
yes,
along the way that helped out?
they were very
Supportive.
good and supportive and helpful, you know, when
That's great. That means
Yes.
a lot when you have that
it
kind of
means
support.
that families are very, yes, very important, and we're very blessed that so many of our kids are around the area too.
One of the things I've asked other interviewees is world and national events that might have influenced your lives, even as a child or as grown adults, as parents. We've had a few reflect on, you mentioned the hurricane of '38 and you had family that lost their life. We had some reflect on the Depression or World War II.
Well, World War II left a big impression on us. We were in school, Elm Street School, during most of that. And little things like the number of servicemen that were around here because of the, obviously, New London and its submarine base. Also, the Westerly Naval Air Station was active, and as well as Charleston. But our school always collected money for savings bonds, and I think they ran the same Jeep up to us every week, or the same ambulance, but we were impressed that this is what we bought for this period and whatever. And I even remember one time my father took me and my brother took us down to the park directly across from Christ Church, in that section down where there's a huge bunch of beautiful trees now, down a sidewalk area that leads to the fountain. But the Navy had brought an F-6F Grumman Hellcat, and if you bought a savings bond for $18.75, which would increase in 10 years to $25, you could sit in the airplane, and that always made a big impression on me. So they obviously towed the airplane from Westerly Airport. The wings fold, so it didn't take up a lot of space. And it was a carrier-borne type of airplane. And the World War II left a big impression, as well as, I guess, the Korean War on the community. Fortunately, I was just young enough where I missed that, but yet was able to, as I mentioned earlier, take advantage of the Korean GI Bill, Public Law 550. But yes, I remember that.
Almeida, how did either one of the wars affect the business at the florist?
I think
I really don't.
some of the people obviously went to war that had
Right,
worked for them.
right.
Like I know you mentioned Barber. He was in
Horace.
Horace
Horace
was
Barber.
in the Army Air Force stationed in England, and brought back a nice English lady as a wife. But there were several of them, but most of his employees realistically were elder people,
Older people. One was Henry Heinold, was German, and he was one of the growers. And but I was almost too young to, and my parents.
You were too young.
Huh?
You were too young.
Yeah, and you know, my mother and father didn't share all of that with us, and you know, those were the days when my father would take his paycheck, and my mother never even knew what he earned, and would burn it in the fireplace. Oh, it's just, you know,
The receipt, not
a
the
receipt,
check.
not the check, the receipt. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Very.
But I
proud.
remember during the war we had the blackout curtains, we had
Yes,
to pull
we
those
did.
down.
We did.
No lights on
And of course,
nothing.
Babcock Road was very close to the airport, so there were many nights when, you know, you could hear planes flying over.
I remember after the war when we used to wander around the airport, which you could do in those days. There was a aircraft dump where wrecked airplanes, because this was a training base, and not everything worked out perfectly. And there must have been a dozen or more wrecked airplanes in there, who would have been stripped of most of their good stuff. But it was still fun as kids to go sit in there on a big sandbank where they had moved sand and whatever to do the runways, make it level. Mm-hmm. All those sandbanks are gone, and I think there's a hangar over in that general area now. But the war was, my father worked at Cottrell's, and then during the war he went to Electric Boat. He was a pattern maker, submarines, and after the war he came back to Cottrell's and finished his career out
Didn't
there.
Dad go to Hamilton?
Your father worked,
Went to-
because he had to do something. He worked second shift at Hamilton Standards, which was over on Mechanic Street, a building adjacent to the old Cottrell Harris facility, and working on propellers, which certainly were big in the war effort.
So you and your father worked at Cottrell at the same time?
Sorry?
Did you and your father work at Cottrell's at the same time?
No.
No.
It wasn't allowed. He was in a minor management position, and I was going into a sales area, and our regulations didn't allow that. If I was working in the factory or doing something, that would have been okay. But as soon as he retired, I went to Harris and spent quite a few years there. But I was the third generation on two sides of my family, my mother's and my father's, to work for that facility which made printing presses.
Yeah, world famous.
World famous web printing presses. Well, when you think in terms of the old Curtis Publishing people, a lot of the, like Saturday Evening Post, National Geographic, any number of major magazines, that some of them still exist, were printed on our equipment. But times change. Now we're into the digital age.
So at your young age now, in your 80s, any philosophies that help get you this far, or you want to share with the rest of the world? Something had to motivate you to this
I
point.
really don't have any good philosophies. I always thought
Life
if
is
I
good.
knew I was
Life
going to
is
live
good.
this long, I would have taken better care of myself. But
Isn't that the truth, though, for everybody?
I know.
I don't want to give it up yet. I'll be 88 next month, so that's
Well,
pretty
God
good.
bless you. That is very good.
Yes, he's in very good,
Yeah.
very good shape.
I'm sure you see to that.
I see to that.
Yes. But as she said, she's much younger than I.
Yeah. She's reminded us several times during the interview. Almeida, any philosophies? You've got a wonderful disposition.
Oh, let me see.
You raised 4 great kids.
Yeah, 4 wonderful children. And, well, you know, we were all taught that we had to be responsible. And we always had jobs, whether it was babysitting. My father and mother purchased a business in Watch Hill in the summertime, and I ran a dress shop there for, it was 2 or 3 years. And that was a responsibility. I mean, I went with my mother, and we went to the retail place or wholesale place and bought the clothing and imported a lot of kilts because of our Scottish history, and it was successful, and we ran it for maybe 4 or 5 years, I think, and then I married John, and I had other responsibilities then, so
And very busy with children.
but anyway, we all had summer jobs and were expected, and my mother didn't drive us. We got on bikes and we rode from Babcock Road to Watch Hill, and that was the way it was.
Okay.
But I have to say that when I was allowed to travel with John and we went to Singapore, that was 4 years of, I mean, truly utopia, because I became a trailing spouse, and that's what my title was in Singapore, a trailing spouse. But it was a chance to, I mean, to meet new people from all over the world, and we traveled in all over the world, to Bali and to all those beautiful places that you read about, and I would never, ever have had that opportunity previous to being allowed to go. So it was a wonderful 4 to 5 years. We met many people, and we still have friendship with those. We've maintained those friendships, and it was a very wonderful, broadening experience.
It was a great opportunity for the both of us.
Yeah.
And I think I was the first one from this company to be sent into Asia, and where we had our office, and in Singapore, and help get something started. So it was worthwhile.
Almeida just said you've traveled the world.
Yeah.
You lived
Yeah.
in Singapore. John, you spent time.
I think we always come back here.
We really are very fortunate that we have this town. It is a warm, loving town. We have a beautiful library, beautiful post office, and
the park.
And the park. I mean, absolutely.
And thanks to folks like you, the arts.
And the art. And look at what the United Theater's been able to do in the past couple of years. So we really are blessed. It's a
And we
wonderful-
were of the age where we watched Westerly when it was a self-contained unit.
Mm-hmm.
You had every store or service was there. You didn't have to go to Warwick or Waterford or somewhere like that to find a store. Town of Westerly had men's stores, 4 or 5 of them. Shoe
And the
stores.
Dowers were our next door neighbors on Babcock Road, and they had the department
So
store.
it's
and-
transitioned to more of an entertainment type of town. Downtown as such, still have the businesses outside, but it's evolved for sure.